Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Case 9 or Excel 9. This will be the last Excel case that we will do for this semester. The next one you will be looking at will be Access, and we will do 4 cases in Access, I believe. So let's go ahead and get started, or let's get into this right now. Start off in Week 1. Make sure your Week 1 tab is clicked. And then the authors ask us to do a couple of things, and I'm not going to go through and do all of these. There's a fair amount of typing to do, but if you'll go to Data and then do Data Validation. Now what we're going to be doing is most of the time when you have input to a spreadsheet, if you put data validation rules, it makes sure that you're putting the right thing in there. For instance, if you were told to enter a number between 1 and 50 and you put a 0.5, then you would get a validation error. If you put a 51 or 52, you'd get a validation error. So the number has to be between 1 and 50. In this case, the authors ask us to create a validation rule to accept only whole numbers between 0 and the available seating limit in B3. Therefore, we have orchestra front, you have 86, but if you notice on Sunday you have 88 seats plugged in there. So you're going to get an error on this. Now sometimes you just get an alert, and sometimes it stops the program. But I'll let you go through. If you'll follow what the author says, just do exactly what he or she says in this. Find this and then go over to input message, type this in here, make sure you don't misspell words, make sure you follow the instructions implicitly, and then do this for each one. And when you do this, then you'll go through and do validation errors for each of these, data validation settings for each of these. The second thing that we do on here is do circle invalid data. We've not put validation errors in here. Once you do that, then this will be circled when you have if you click this, then it will be circled and you will have this to look at when you're doing this. So the next thing we do is group the 4 worksheets together. You do that by clicking on one tab and then hold Shift key down and click on the last tab you want to do that, or you can just click on Week 1, hold Control down and click week 2, Week 3, Week 4. It doesn't matter. Purpose of doing this, so anything you type in one, you type in all of them. You can do this, but your spreadsheets, your worksheets need to be very similar or identical when you are doing this. The author asks us to enter a formula in cell C11 to calculate Sunday's orchestra front revenue, which is based on the number of seats sold and the price per seat, one times the other. Make sure though, because you're going to do this over here and you're going to drag this down and drag this over, make sure you do the appropriate relative. For instance, when you are multiplying one by the other, then sometimes it changes. The numbers change and sometimes they don't. We've done this before, so make sure that you do that so you can drag it down and it's correct. Typically you'll get an error, a 0, or an NA if you haven't done that. Otherwise you should get all the correct numbers to do this with. Continuing down the instructions, let's see, the rest of it is some math, nothing more than that. Use Format Painter. Format Painter is kind of cool. If you're copying a format or a formula and you want this same format put someplace else, you just click Format Painter and notice how you get this. And if you don't click anything, you have a little paintbrush, and then if you want to paint that format, then you can see what it does. And so follow the instructions for what you're doing this. The next thing we're going to do is go into the documentation worksheet. I like hyperlinks. You like hyperlinks because you're used to using hyperlinks. A lot of students turn in papers with hyperlinks on them, and that's usually not a good thing. But in this case, it will cause you to get a correct answer. Author says go to the documentation worksheet, create a hyperlink from the Week 1 label to cell A1 on the Week 1 worksheet. So Week 1 label right here, right click, go down to hyperlink, and then you can go to places in the document and then click here and do this, and now you've got a hyperlink over. If you notice, if you roll your mouse up and without clicking anything, you can see the hyperlink right here. Then he says do the same thing for everything else. Then the author says on the Week 1 worksheet, you go up and click this, and then I think we're going to hyperlink home It says create a hyperlink from cell A1 back to cell A1 on the documentation worksheet. This is and then group the worksheets and then use the fill across worksheets. So hopefully by now you've noticed that if you've never done that before, you have fill right here. This is grayed out because I don't have anything annotated here. If I had these highlighted or linked together, then this would be ungrayed out, and you just follow the across worksheets for this. The next thing seems to confuse a lot of people, so I'm going to talk slow and clear about this. You're going to insert a 3D formula, 3 meaning dimensional formula, that calculates the total Sunday orchestra front revenue for all 4 weeks in cell C11 in the October worksheet. So if we go to the October worksheet and then we go to C11 right here, then the way to approach this and the best way to do the let me collect my thoughts just a minute. The best way to do this right here is to click on the cell that you're going to use as a reference or a three-dimensional, and then begin with equal. And typically it's a sum function. Well, it is in this case. It's certainly a sum function, but it's sum and open. And then you want to put your inclusive of where you're going to. Now in our case, and I will learn how to type. In our case, it's sum. And then he said go from week 1 we'll get here in a minute, equals sum, and then it's week 1, shift key down to week 4. And you notice, even though you've done all of this, you have all 4 of them highlighted now. And so the next thing you want to do is put the cell that you're going to sum. In this case it will be C11. Close your parentheses, and that is a 3-dimensional formula. If you notice, it says equals to sum, and then you have it looks like an apostrophe, week 1 through week 4. That means that those are work pages, worksheets. And then it's the C11 cell on each of those, and click enter. And obviously we have nothing there yet. Once you've done all this work, then you're going to have all of these done. Just to kind of show you what it would be if I put 22 in here and 22 in here and 22 in here and 22 in here, then theoretically this ought to be 88. So there's your 3D formula. Hopefully that's easy. The next thing we're going to do, and everything else we've done is another 3D formula. I'll let you figure that one out. Then the author says to correct the circular reference in cell B7. Let's see if we can find B7 and find what the circular reference is. Well, it looks right here. Excuse me. It looks here that it's saying 86 plus 16 plus 64 plus 46 is 0. If we click on this, then we see the sum of B3 to B7. It's saying B3 to B7. So your circular reference is you're 1 off. That needs to be a different number. How about B6? And then there is our circular reference error that we have to do. The last thing on this is to create a footer on the documentation worksheet. And create a footer, and if you will go over to page layout and go to margins and go to custom margins and then go to footer, or you can simply do this and go to footer. Then you can create a custom footer and just follow what the author says. Create a footer on this sheet with the sheet name in the center and field name, blah, blah, blah. And then you can see all of this here. And then I think he has us do a landscape setup right here. So that's it. They ask you to save it and submit it. So I think I've gone through all the stuff This is not not a very hard case, but there are a couple of things in here that will get you if you're not careful. So, hope you enjoyed the case. Good day.